Welcome to BookTube English. Let's improve our English while exploring the most widely read books in the world. This channel features a variety of genres: self-help, business, health, religion, and spirituality, all organized into separate playlists. Have you ever felt a surge of emotion so strong, so complex, that you just couldn't find the right word for it? You know it's not quite anger, and it's not just sadness, but it's something in between, a tangled mess in your chest. Or maybe you've tried to explain a feeling to someone you love, and the words just fell flat, creating more distance instead of connection. What if I told you there's a map for that? A guide to help you navigate the vast, wild, and sometimes scary landscape of your own heart. Today, we are embarking on a journey with a book that does exactly that. We're exploring the #1 New York Times bestseller, Atlas of the Heart, Mapping Meaningful Connection and the Language of Human Experience, by the one and only Dr. Brené Brown. Now, if you've been anywhere near the world of personal development, leadership, or just being a human on the internet in the last decade, you've probably heard of Brené Brown. She's not just an author, she's a research professor who has spent over 20 years studying the very things that make us kick: courage, vulnerability, shame, and empathy. Her TED Talk, The Power of Vulnerability, is one of the most viewed talks in the entire world, with over 60 million views. That's not just a popular video, that's a global phenomenon. She's written 6 #1 New York Times bestsellers, her work is translated into more than 30 languages, and she even has a fantastic docuseries on Max based on this very book. So when Brené Brown decides to create an atlas, you know it's going to be a map to a place we all need to explore, ourselves. So what exactly is Atlas of the Heart? The title itself is a beautiful metaphor. An atlas is a collection of maps. It doesn't tell you where to go, but it shows you the terrain. It gives you names for mountains, rivers, and valleys so you know where you are and you can chart a course to where you want to be. This book does the same thing, but for our emotions. Brené takes us through 87 of the emotions and experiences that define what it means to be human. 87! I don't know about you, but before reading this, I could probably name maybe 10 or 15 common emotions off the top of my head. Happy, sad, angry, surprised, scared, and then I'd start to struggle. This book opens up a whole new world. It's built on a powerful premise that she states right at the beginning. If we want to find the way back to ourselves and one another, we need language and the grounded confidence to both tell our stories and be stewards of the stories that we hear. It's all about language. It's about having the precise words to understand what's happening inside of us and the ability to then communicate that to others in a way that builds connection, not confusion. As Sierra Wilson, an editor at Amazon, put it so perfectly, Brené unpacks the complex web of emotion, behavior, and thoughts that are triggered by our experiences and gives us the nuanced language to fully understand our feelings and express them to others. And when you read it, you get this overwhelming sense that she just gets you. It can be a chilling and incredibly validating experience. This isn't your typical self-help book that you read from cover to cover and then put on a shelf. It's more like a reference guide, a companion for life. It's beautifully designed with full-colored pages, illustrations, and a layout that makes it a joy to just hold and flip through. Many readers have mentioned its incredible aesthetic quality, calling it a beautifully crafted map. It's the kind of book you leave on your coffee table or your nightstand, and you find yourself picking it up to understand a specific feeling you had during the day. Why did I feel so resentful in that meeting? What's the difference between disappointment and regret? What is this feeling of wonder that I had watching the sunset? The book has answers. It's organized into chapters that group related emotions together, like places we go when we're hurting, places we go when we compare, or places we go when things are uncertain. This structure makes it so easy to navigate. The feedback from readers is overwhelmingly positive. With over 20,000 ratings on Amazon and a stellar 4.33 on Goodreads from over 90,000 people, it's clear this book has struck a chord. People call it thought-provoking, a great resource, and masterful in giving words more meaning. They love how it helps them put language to their emotions, making complex concepts feel accessible and relatable. And because of its beautiful design and profound content, many say it's one of their favorite books to give as a gift. While a few readers had mixed feelings about the pacing, many find it exciting, and I think that's because you can approach it in different ways. You can either read it straight through or dip in and out to explore the emotions that are most relevant to you at any given moment. It's a book that meets you where you are. But the real magic of this book, the part that truly changes you, is how it redefines your relationship with your own feelings. It moves you from being tossed around by the waves of your emotions to becoming a skilled navigator of your own inner sea. And the best way to understand this power is to dive into some of the profound wisdom held within its pages. So let's explore 3 of my absolute favorite quotes from Atlas of the Heart and really unpack them together. Our first quote is one that sits at the very core of the book's philosophy. Brené Brown writes, "Language shows us that naming an experience doesn't give the experience more power. It gives us the power of understanding and meaning." Let's just sit with that for a moment. Naming an experience doesn't give the experience more power. It gives us the power. This is such a radical and empowering shift in perspective. I think many of us, perhaps unconsciously, operate under the opposite belief. We're afraid that if we say the name of the scary thing out loud, if we admit, "I feel shame," or "I am full of dread," or "I am completely overwhelmed," we are somehow making it more real, more solid, more powerful. We think that by ignoring it or calling it something softer, like, "I'm just a little stressed," we can keep it small and manageable. But Brené, backed by her decades of research, tells us that the opposite is true. The unnamed, nebulous feeling floating around inside you is the one with all the power. It's the monster in the dark. You don't know its shape, its size, or its intentions. It controls you because you can't even see it clearly. But the moment you turn on the light and name it, the moment you can say, "Ah, that's not just stress, that's burnout," or "That isn't anger, it's deep disappointment," you take the power back. Think about it like this. Imagine you're feeling sick. You have a fever, aches, and a general feeling of being unwell. The not knowing is terrifying. Your mind can race to all the worst-case scenarios. But then you go to a doctor, and they run some tests and say, "You have the flu." Is the news great? No, being sick is never fun. But in that moment of diagnosis, the fear of the unknown shrinks. You have a name for it. You have a path forward, rest, fluids, maybe some medication. You have a sense of control. You have understanding and meaning. The illness didn't get more powerful because it was named. You did. This is exactly what Atlas of the Heart does for our emotional lives. It gives us the diagnostic tools. Let's take an example from the book. Brené explains the difference between stress and overwhelm. We use these words interchangeably all the time, but she defines stress as feeling like you have too much to do and not enough time, energy, or resources to do it. It's a state of pressure. Overwhelm, on the other hand, is an extreme level of stress where you are completely submerged, leading to shutdown. When you're stressed, you can still function, you can still problem solve, even if it's frantic. When you're in overwhelm, you freeze. Knowing this distinction is a game changer. If you can identify, okay, I'm not just stressed, I am in a state of overwhelm, you know that your usual stress management tactics won't work. Pushing harder won't help. You need a different strategy. You need to stop, to disconnect, to find a way to get your head above water before you can even think about tackling the to-do list. That is the power of language. It's not about being a vocabulary nerd. It's about having the clarity to give yourself what you actually need. This single quote transforms the entire act of feeling from a passive experience into an active, powerful process of self-discovery and self-care. It's the permission slip we all need to look our feelings in the eye and call them by their name. Now, let's move on to our second quote. This one gets into the really tough, messy, and beautiful work that happens once we decide to stop avoiding our feelings. Brené shares a deeply personal reflection. When we stop numbing and start feeling and learning again, we have to reevaluate everything, especially how to choose loving ourselves over making other people comfortable. It was the hardest work I've ever done and continue to do. Wow, this one hits hard, doesn't it? Let's break it down piece by piece. First, she talks about numbing. What does that mean? Numbing is anything we do to avoid feeling. And in our modern world, the options are endless. It can be the obvious things like drinking too much or eating too much. But it can also be the socially acceptable things. It can be working 80 hours a week and calling it ambition. It can be scrolling endlessly through social media and calling it relaxing. It can be binge watching an entire series in a weekend and calling it self-care. It can be staying busy, so we never have a quiet moment to check in with ourselves. These are all forms of emotional anesthetic. We do them to avoid the discomfort of what's really going on inside. But what happens, as the quote says, when we stop numbing and start feeling? It's like a dam breaking. All the emotions we've been holding back, the grief, the fear, the joy, the anger, come rushing in. And in that flood of feeling, we start to see things clearly for the first time. We start to reevaluate everything. We look at our jobs, our relationships, our choices, and we see them through a new lens, the lens of our own truth. And this leads to the most crucial and difficult part of the quote, especially how to choose loving ourselves over making other people comfortable. This is the heart of the matter. So many of us, for so much of our lives, are conditioned to be people pleasers. We're taught to be nice, to be agreeable, to not make waves. We learn to swallow our own feelings to keep the peace. We say yes when we mean no. We laugh at jokes that aren't funny. We stay quiet when we disagree. We prioritize the comfort of our parents, our partners, our friends, our bosses over our own authenticity and well-being. We do this because the thought of disappointing someone or making them angry or having them think less of us is terrifying. But when you truly start to feel, you realize the immense cost of this behavior. You realize that every time you choose someone else's comfort over your own truth, you are abandoning yourself. You are sending a message to the deepest part of you that says you don't matter as much. Brené calls choosing yourself the hardest work because it requires immense courage. It means setting boundaries. It means having difficult conversations. It means saying things like, I can't do that for you, or that doesn't work for me, or the way you're speaking to me is not okay. And here's the kicker. When you do this, some people will be uncomfortable. They might be used to you being the easygoing one, the one who always says yes. Your new boundaries might feel like a personal rejection to them, and that is incredibly hard to sit with. But what this quote reminds us is that true self-love isn't a bubble bath or a face mask. It's the gritty, ongoing, moment-by-moment choice to honor your own needs, values, and feelings even when it's easier not to. It's choosing to stand by yourself, even if it means you sometimes have to stand alone. The fact that Brené Brown, this incredibly successful and self-aware person, still calls this the hardest work I continue to do is so validating. It's not a one-time fix. It's a lifelong practice of returning to yourself over and over again. And that brings us to our third and final quote for today. This one is about where so many of our emotional patterns begin, in childhood. And it highlights why the work of understanding emotions is so critical not just for ourselves, but for the next generation. Brené writes, "For children, it's easy for everything to become a source of shame when nothing is normalized. You assume that if no one is talking about it, it must be just you." This quote is a direct spotlight on the destructive power of silence. Shame, as Brené has taught the world, is the intensely painful feeling or experience of believing that we are flawed and therefore unworthy of love and belonging. And its favorite breeding ground is secrecy, silence, and judgment. Let's imagine a child's world. A child fails a test. A child gets into a fight with their best friend. A child feels a flash of jealousy when their sibling gets a new toy. These are universal human experiences. They are normal. But what happens in a home where these things are not talked about? What happens when the adults react with anger or dismissal or just uncomfortable silence? The child's brain, which is wired for connection and meaning-making, has to come up with a story to explain what's happening. And in the absence of information, the story it almost always creates is this: something is wrong with me. I am the only one who feels this way. If I were a good kid, this wouldn't have happened. I am bad. That is the birth of shame. The child internalizes the experience not as something they did, fail a test, but as something they are, a failure. The feeling of jealousy isn't just a fleeting emotion. It becomes proof that they are a bad, selfish person. And because no one is talking about it, the child feels utterly alone in their experience, which only deepens the shame. They carry this secret belief of their own defectiveness with them, often into adulthood. This is where the power of normalizing comes in. Normalizing is the antidote to shame. It's the simple, powerful act of an adult saying, "Oh, you feel jealous? That's so normal. I feel jealous sometimes too. It happens when we want something someone else has. Let's talk about it." Or, "You're feeling really disappointed about that test. I get it. It feels awful to work hard and not get the result you want. That has happened to me before too." Can you feel the difference? In that moment, the entire emotional landscape shifts. The child is no longer isolated in their badness. They are connected in their shared humanity. The emotion is just an emotion, a normal temporary state, not a character flaw. This is what Atlas of the Heart equips us to do. As the customer review mentioned, it's an incredible gift for parents. By giving us the language for 87 different experiences, it gives us the tools to normalize the entire spectrum of being human for our children. We can help them build an inner world free from the toxic weight of shame. And of course, this quote isn't just about children. It applies to all of us. Think about the workplace. When a project fails and leadership is silent, everyone starts whispering. They blame each other. They blame themselves. Shame and fear fill the air. But when a leader stands up and says, "Okay, team, this didn't work. We failed on this one. It's normal for things not to work out. Let's talk about what we learned and how we can do better." They are normalizing failure. They are creating a culture of courage and psychological safety, not one of shame and blame. This quote is a profound reminder that our words and our silence have the power to either create deep wells of shame or build strong bridges of connection. So, as we wrap up our exploration of Atlas of the Heart, what's the big takeaway? This book is so much more than a dictionary of feelings. It is, as Brené says, a framework for meaningful connection. It's a tool that helps us build that connection first with ourselves by giving us the clarity to understand our own inner world. And once we have that self-understanding, we can then connect with others in a more authentic, empathetic, and meaningful way. We can tell our own stories with confidence, and we can become better stewards of the stories we hear from others. It's a book about empowerment, the power that comes from precision, the power that comes from choosing yourself, and the power that comes from normalizing the beautiful, messy, complicated experience of being human. It's a book that I believe can genuinely change the way you navigate your life, your relationships, and your own heart. It's an essential guide for anyone with an adventurous spirit who wants to travel the landscape of their life without the fear of getting lost. If anything we've talked about today has resonated with you, if you're curious to learn the language of your own heart, I cannot recommend Atlas of the Heart highly enough. It's a journey worth taking. Thank you so much for joining me today on BookTube English. If you found this discussion helpful or interesting, please give this video a thumbs up and consider sharing it with someone who might need it. And of course, don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more deep dives into the world's most impactful books. I would love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. Have you read Atlas of the Heart? What was your biggest takeaway? Or what other books have helped you understand yourself better? Let's get a great conversation going. Thanks again for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.